yard is the headquarters of the Smith family, fairground proprietors of Leighton Buzzard in Hertfordshire. These Smiths have been travelling showmen for several generations, and if you live in or around the northern home counties, the chances are you will have seen or visited Smith's Fair. As we look around the yard in September 1992, we see history in the making. This is because the Smiths are selling some of their big rides and their accompanying transport. The famous circus owner Gerry Cottle has bought 4 big rides and their transport to form the nucleus of a travelling fair to accompany his celebrated circus. Gerry isn't after just any old fair. He wants a top-quality vintage fair, which will transport him and his punters back to the golden age of the 1950s and 60s, when machines were big and handsomely painted and throbbed to the sounds of rock and roll. In those days, the young blades would roar onto the fairground on their Triumph motorbikes, or in their big flashy Ford Zodiac cars, with their short-skirted girlfriends on their arms. Then they would leap onto the big rides for a 5-minute thrill as the sounds of Eddie Cochran blasted out of the loudspeakers. Those were the days. So what is going on here in this time capsule? Well, the remaining vintage rolling stock is brought out for inspection, ready to be sold. The machines which Gerry Cottle has purchased have been packed away at Leighton Buzzard for some 10 years. These are a Dodgem track, a Noah's Ark, an Octopus and a Lightning Swirl. Those 4 rides were owned and travelled by T. Smith and Sons. T. Smith being Tom Smith Sr., the governor, who died in November 1968. Since Tom Sr.'s death, Tom's children have each bought their own fairground business independently, buying their own tackle, which goes some way towards explaining the long internment of these original T. Smith and Sons machines. Later, we'll catch up with Gerry Cottle again in his own yard at Addlestone Moor in Surrey, where he was to give the machines a thorough overhaul before taking them for their triumphant debut in his ownership at the vast exhibition halls in Wembley, where they would be presented with his winter circus and carnival for Christmas and New Year. Before we see this grand climax to our story, let us pause for a while and look at the history of T. Smith and Sons and their magnificent fair in its heyday, and the attractions travelled by the firm. First, we should meet the governor. Here he is, Tom Smith Sr. In characteristic pose, every inch the riding master, enthroned in his Dodgem paybox. In 1927 at Willesden, Tom married Florence Pettigrew, seen here in later life. Of course, the Pettigrews were and still are a famous family of showmen in their own right. Their set of Tidman gallopers has been travelling the fairs since it was new in 1885. Florence died in May 1970. Tom and Florence were travelling small stuff in their younger days. Big rides were a long way off. This murky photo from the 1930s shows Tom seated beside his lorry changing a back wheel. Beside him is his small son, Tom Jr. A blown-out tyre and other mishaps are the lot of travelling showmen. Here a lorry has collided with Tom Smith's Dodgem joint, breaking some of the poles. Son Tom Jr. is seen here minding his father's spinner during the 1940s. The shutters are painted with vintage racing cars and aeroplanes. During the recent clear-out, a rare relic was unearthed, the head from the Smith spinner. A fearsome creature indeed. Tom and Florence had another son, Albert, seen in here in 1940s, starting up his father's ex-War Department Tilling Stevens lorry. This was one of nearly 200 such vehicles produced as searchlight trucks, which made them ideal for generating purposes on the fairground. Tom and Florence also had a daughter, Eileen, seen here second from the left, riding on her father's juvenile Dobbies. The other children are Emily and Nathan Buckland and Gloria Smith. Eileen is now married to Michael Miller, and they have a big wheel, a satellite and a set of tubes, and are frequently to be found on various Smith's fairgrounds. Let's have another look at Tom Sr.'s smart little set of Halstead Dobbies, built to the classic design. Here is the tuneful little organ which graced the centre of the ride. This picture shows the Dobbies and the spinner standing side by side at Dunstable Statute Street Fair in the late 1940s. Tom Sr. and Florence had various other small attractions during the 30s and 40s, including confetti and squirt tables, Dodgems, darts, coconut sheet, wheel 'em in, saucer smasher, a 2-2 shooter and a big striker. They also had a set of High Park swing boats, still on the road in the late 1970s, seen here at Hemel Hempstead in 1978. Now it's time to start looking at those 4 legendary big machines which travelled under the banner of T. Smith and Sons Amusements in their heyday. Early in 1950, Tom Smith Sr. bought 2 rides from the well-known London section riding master Harry Simmons. These were a Dodgem track and a Noah's Ark. This is the Dodgem, which had been new to Harry Simmons in the mid-1930s. It was built by Lang Wheels to their classic pre-war pattern of 20 sections, with very handsome but heavy wooden pillars 8 inches square. In this picture, the track is seen with supercar Superba model cars of the early 1950s. Here we can see the track at night, as bought from Simmons, showing the original pre-war cars. Also, the gag boards still display Simmons' name thereon. We're now inside the track at Aylesbury in May 1962, showing the paybox, which, like many Dodgem payboxes of the pre-war period, had a quaint pitched cottage roof. This build-up shot lets you clearly see the handsome pillars and trellis work to advantage. Here we can see the original wooden sleepers being laid and levelled at Dunstable in September 1964. The 3 frame trucks are standing ready for unloading, with the sections of the paybox painted with a glamorous skyscraper scene, a theme which was popular on several big rides in the post-war years. In the winter of 1972 to 73, major work was carried out on the track. It was lengthened by 2 plate lengths to about 80 feet and given a new supercar brick pattern floor, seen here being laid at Pinner Fair in 1973. The side pillars were spaced out and a new double alloy trellis was fitted each side. Also, the track was given a fleet of new supercar cars to one of their last designs. A complete repaint was done, which considerably enhanced the appearance of the handsome woodwork. It was carried out by Fred Fowle. Also, a new pay box was fitted and decorated by Fred Fowle to match, as we can see here. By 1981, the track had a fleet of French Revachon cars. The other machine bought from Harry Simmons in 1950 was this smart little Noah's Ark. This is an intriguing machine in several ways. Its pedigree before Simmons' ownership is something of a mystery. What is strange is the extended gratings at the front of the massive sweep of the front steps. Also distinctive are the 2 Orton and Spooner classical pillars and top front flight panels, all features of which were to be found on the much bigger Orton super speedways of the late 1930s. A further interesting feature is the big 4-bay extension front framework carrying light battens, as in this picture taken in 1960 at Ruislip. None of us can ever remember seeing front boards adorning this elaborate framework. No matter. This lucky little ride certainly earned its keep during the 50s and 60s, as we can see here at Pinner. And now we are on board the machine at night, when it was riding black with more eager riders waiting on the walkways. What atmosphere! The wide frontage was not the only big feature of this ride. Here is its big 4-wheel centre truck, jacked up at Pinner in 1966. The spider frame is being laid here at Dunstable in September 1964 for the Statutes Fair. 1961 was the year of the Octopus, with several famous riding masters having new octopi from Hayes Fabrications. Tom Smith had one of these early in 1961, seen here at Harefield. This was a very handsome specimen. Fred Fowle was entrusted with the decoration. As usual, he made a splendid job of it. Look at the exciting detail on the cars. Classic Fred Fowle work.